human beings have a choice of either following what the law has prescribed or not. So where they choose not to, then they disobey. This is error. Sometimes it's a matter of ignorance. They don't know it. This is what they've grown up with. This is what everybody was doing in their area. That's what they were practicing. That's how they understood Islam. See, sometimes it's innocent. Sometimes it has to do with their own choice. And of course Allah will judge them according to whether it was a deliberate choice where they understood and knew better but they went and did it, or whether it was something out of ignorance they didn't have any opportunity to understand otherwise and they made that mistake as a result of it. Go ahead.
I know some people who go to gatherings where they keep food around and they start to chant and they give salam to the Prophet. Is that not shirk as well?
Our brother's question concerning gatherings where people prepare certain foods and they gather around it and they make certain chants, they make certain du'as or whatever, and then they distribute this food in different ways and they call it niyaz or something like this, right? Is that shirk? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's shirk, depending on what people believe in it, because you have some people who believe that when they do that, the Prophet ﷺ becomes present in their gatherings. Yeah. If this is what you believe, then there's some aspect of shirk happening here. But if it is just that you feel that Allah's blessings will be on this, and when you give this food you get reward from it, so in other words you feel this is a righteous deed, then we say this is bid'ah, innovation in the religion, because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not do it. Question from sisters? I'm going to take one.
My question is as far as Shia. Would they be considered following shirk or they practice bid'ah? That's why I'm confused.
Well, our sister's question in terms of the Shia, do we consider them as being involved in shirk or are they practicing bid'ah? I would say both. They're practicing bid'ah and they're following practices of shirk. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they become non-Muslims, because we have in the body of quote-unquote Sunni Muslims those who are doing the same. Those who are going to the graves of the saints. Ajmer in India, for example, a great gathering place of thousands, 100,000 Muslims go there and pray to the dead person in the grave there. Okay? And they call themselves Sunni Muslims. Well, they're involved here in aspects of shirk as well as bid'ah. So these acts, of course, though forbidden in Islam, etc., it doesn't necessarily mean that it makes a person a non-Muslim. Only if that person has understood what is wrong in what they're practicing, what is correct has been made clear to them, and they reject that, at that point they become, in fact, disbelievers. And that is left to Allah. Because we don't need to make this judgment. Because again, some people might say, well, I went to this person who was going to the grave and I told him and I brought the evidence to him and he still went. Well, it may be that the way you brought the evidence, he wasn't able to understand. Maybe the language you used. Maybe your explanation was weak. A variety of different things. Allah knows whether that person actually grasped it and decided otherwise. So that ruling of disbelief, that is left to Allah. It's not on us now to go and tell Muslims, you are a kafir, you Muslim, you are a kafir. No. We can say, yes, you're involved in some aspects of shirk here. Beware, so and so, we advise them, so and so. These are actions of kufr, so and so. But to say, you are a kafir, we don't have that right. Allah, that judgment is left to Allah. Unless the person openly tells you, I am a kafir. I don't believe. I reject that which is clear and obvious from the religion.
Just a clarification, when you say that raising hand, that's raising hand in Jama'at. Imam raises his hand and everybody follows that. But individual raising hand is taken.
Okay, brother's question. The raising of the hands in dua after every prayer. Is it just the raising of the hands in jama'ah, along with the imam, which everybody knows clearly Prophet ﷺ didn't do that? Or is it just the raising of hands by yourself? if you just, as an individual, not in jama'ah, but after every prayer you raise your hand, that is also bid'ah. Because we have no evidence that the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands after every prayer. In fact, we have other evidence that he didn't. So for you to make it a regular practice, after every prayer you must raise your hands in dua, you have made a bid'ah, an innovation. Now if you do it on occasion, the mood catches you, you feel like it, you raise your hands on occasion, no problem. But when you fix it as a ritual, after every prayer you're doing it, now you have innovated. From the sisters? Yeah, after this, next session. Sister's question concerning the sunnah of doing and the sunnah of not doing, where I stress that this is in matters of religion. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was to not eat dab, which is a desert lizard. It was served, people ate it in Arabia. It was offered to him, he didn't eat it. That was his sunnah not to eat it. But we are not obliged to follow that sunnah, because that was his personal dislike and he said it. Right? So where the Prophet ﷺ had a personal dislike, we're not obliged to follow that. Or where he had a personal like. For example, when he went to the marketplace, he wanted to get a pair of sandals. He chose a particular style of sandals. One which had 2 straps, made from cow's leather, reddish colored, from Yemen, with the hair scraped off. You can find this description of his sandals in Shama'il at-Tirmidhi. Now, is that deen? Is that something that we as Muslims should try to follow? No. It's not required of us. That was his personal like, and that's what he chose. We're not obliged to follow that. That is not considered a part of the deen. Of course, some people in ignorance, there's a book called Shama'il at-Tirmidhi, translated originally into Urdu, from there into English, which was around. I had a copy of it, where the author, after looking at this hadith, the hadith compiled by Imam at-Tirmidhi, scholar of hadith, describing the sandal of the Prophet ﷺ, he in his commentary went on to explain the benefits from the sandal. If you drew a picture of the sandal, you put it under your pillow, this is going to happen for you, and that is going to happen, and you know what? Hey, we say, where did this come from? Where did this come from? Right? This is where a person has gone off. Right? So, if we take those things, which are personal preferences of the Prophet ﷺ in day-to-day life, which has nothing to do with religion, and we make it a part of the religion, either we are making bid'ah, in that we're offering these other rewards in this way, as people did, or we're making the religion restricted to certain parts of the world. Because if that was from the Sunnah, and this is preferable for us to do, then what are we saying about the practice of this for the Eskimos? Now, if they were to choose a pair of sandals with 2 straps and go out, in the North Pole there, they would get frostbite and have to have their legs amputated. Now, we're saying basically they can't get the reward of the Sunnah. No. The Sunnah, where it has to do with religion, this is something applicable universally. Those things which are personal, you will find them limited to particular areas, particular periods of time.
You didn't use this term, but what is the appropriate meaning of Rafida, and who are they among Shia?
Well, the term Rafida was applied by scholars to those who rejected. Rafida from Raft means to reject. Those are the rejectors, right? Rafida means reject. And there was a disagreement which developed amongst some of the descendants of Ali from Hussein, in which one of the sons went one way and one of the other sons went another way. Those who rejected the way of one of the sons became known as the Rafidah. This is what they use it as one of the terms, because those who rejected and went along with the other line, these end up in practical terms to be those who are known as the 12er Shiites, the mainstream Shiites. Rafidah really applies to the 12ers, although some people take it to mean the extremists amongst them. But in general, really, it refers to mainstream Shiaism as we know it. Ithna Ashariya is the 12ers, meaning they follow the 12 Imams.
Brother, please correct me if I'm wrong. This at-tahiyatu that we read in Salah, isn't it the conversation that took place between Allah and the Prophet when he was visiting him by the Salah?
Well, that's news to me, sister. I don't know if you have a hadith on that, to that effect, which is authentic, then we can say that's the case. I have never come across such hadith. Not that I've come across every hadith that there exists, but I don't know it. If you can bring it, then we can look at it. Okay, our sister clarifying that this explanation is from books written in Urdu where there is no evidence for it. Inshallah. Did you ask a question before? Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question about the anwsers. So, say you were to look in, like you said, you were looking at little things. Say you were looking at little things for the Prophet is that considered like a sin?
Okay, brother's asking if a person wears a pendant which says Allah or Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or it has Ayatul Kursi, we could say even. I have some pendants like that. Ayatul Kursi is etched on it, right? Is this considered shirk? Well, it depends. If you believe that in wearing this it will protect you, then yes, you have entered into shirk. But if you are wearing it because you feel it is jewelry, it looks attractive and you like it and you're wearing it as an accessory, right? Of course, as a man wearing it around your neck, this is questionable anyway, because then you're starting to look like women, right? That's another issue, right? Men wearing chains and stuff like this. This is considered imitation of the dress of females. But for a woman wearing these things, if she's not believing that this is going to protect her in any way, then it's not considered to be an aspect of shirk. Alaykum salam wa barakatuh. Okay, I didn't say don't raise your hands when making dua. Please get this clear, right? I didn't say that. I'm saying don't make it a regular practice. What I'm saying is sometimes you may raise your hands while making dua, and other times you make your dua without raising your hands. This is the point. Let us not feel that the only way to make dua is you must raise your hands. This is not the case. You can make dua without raising your hands. Right? So this is what I'm saying. The making of dua also during the time of sujood. This is the time Prophet ﷺ recommended this, or times when du'as are accepted. One may do so in the salah at that point also.
I come from a community where the culture, predominant culture, they revere their dead, And so at the end of the salah, they ask the imam to say something, and then he says something like, in Arabic, and everybody prepares it. And then he says something else, is this okay?
The idea after prayer, to ask people to pray for the dead. If somebody has died, they're asking to pray for the dead. The idea of prayer for the dead is by itself is okay. One may do so. Asking Allah's forgiveness for this person who has died, etc. But where it becomes a ritual, yarhamkallah, Where it becomes a ritual, after prayers regularly, people are asking, and this is just a standard practice, then we have now innovation here. We have a kind of innovation.
So it's okay to do it Saturday?
On occasion, if somebody asks, the imam, it's just like asking somebody to pray for you, and they make a dua, and when they finish making the dua, you say, Ameen, for example. May Allah, Ameen meaning, may Allah accept it. Pardon? Okay. The evil of what Allah has created. Now, when Allah created the fish spine, in the fish it's got a backbone with these like spines on it, right? That backbone with the spines in the fish was a good thing. It kept the fish's body together so he could swim in the water, etc. Now, if that spine, any of the pieces of that spine, we call it a fish bone, if that sticks in your throat, that's an evil thing. Relative to yourself, that becomes an evil thing. So there's evil coming out of what Allah has created in that context. You understand? So we're not saying Allah created this to harm you, but harm may come out of it. Or rain. Rain is a good thing. But sometimes rain becomes a terrible thing. Right? So there's this harm which comes out of rain, but is rain in and of itself evil? No. Yeah, okay, this is another example of, in our lives, the issue of evil with good intent is that of the dentist injecting in your gums Novocaine or whatever. It is something painful. The needle is so long, you can feel it tickling your toes. Right? Nobody likes the dentist needle. But we subject ourselves to it on a regular basis to prevent greater harm, which is the rotting of our teeth and the root canals and everything else. So that evil, what appears to us external of that circumstance to be something evil, is in fact something good for us. It may be a relative thing, for example, where I remember one occasion seeing a picture in the newspaper, I cut it out, where they had this Egyptian brother, and it had on one side his sister was kissing him on one cheek, and his father was kissing him on the other cheek. And he had this huge smile from ear to ear, his thumbs were up like this. And I read the caption, what was it? What had happened was, he was supposed to catch a particular flight, the Gulf Air flight, last year, which was going to Bahrain. Now this air flight crashed in the sea. When he had gone to the airport to catch his flight, he was refused the right to go on that flight because he was missing a stamp on his passport. And in Egypt, you have to have 1,000 stamps before you can do anything, right? Yeah, so many people have to stamp. So he had gotten all his stamps except for one stamp. And there he was at the airport, one stamp missing, they wouldn't allow him. Of course, his whole world was falling apart around him because he was a teacher. It was a flight of teachers. They were going back, the beginning of the new term, he had to go back and teach. So to come back late, maybe they will fire him, they're going to take off pay or whatever. He was terrible. His world crashed around him. He was begging, screaming, please. No, flight took off. Then he heard the flight crashed. And everybody on board died. So there he was in the newspaper the next day, big smile on his face, That which he thought was such a terrible calamity the day before was now good fortune for him. So in that relative sense, though it was evil, in the sense of what happened to the other people, for that individual, it was